I want to return today to the subject of immigration. Today marks the 285th day since the immigration bill passed right here in the United States Senate with almost 70 votes, and 285 days later, we're still waiting for the House of Representatives to act on that bipartisan piece of legislation. Every single day, the House drags its feet on immigration, Mr. President. Our borders remain less secure. Our visa system keeps us less competitive. Our economy suffers. Millions of families remain in the shadows. Hardworking immigrants who came here to live the American dream and who are part of the fabric of our communities all over the state of Colorado and all over the United States of America are suffering because Congress has not passed a bill. Families like Dulce Saenz' family from Hudson, Colorado. When Dulce's father was deported, she and one of her sisters stayed in Colorado to start college while her mom and younger sister moved to Mexico to be with their dad. It was a heartbreaking decision for the family to separate, but that's what they needed to do. Now all three sisters have gone to the University of Denver in Colorado. They've started careers in public service, but they rarely see their parents and they worry about their safety. It's clear to everybody that I talk to here and at home that our current immigration system is broken. It's also clear to me, and I think to many people, that separating families doesn't reflect our history. It doesn't do honor to the values that shape that history. So while the House stalls, the Secretary of Homeland Security is reviewing our deportation policy and exploring other ways we can help keep families together. It's a good step in the absence of a bill. We should prioritize deportations in a way that reflect our values as a country, uphold the rule of law, and keeps families together. But in the end, the only way to come to a full and permanent solution is to pass this immigration reform bill. What's so frustrating about this, Mr. President, of course, this isn't unusual in Washington these days when we become so used to getting the bare minimum accomplished, keeping the lights on for another week or for another month. But what's so frustrating on this issue is that we have bipartisan agreement that the current immigration system is broken and that it's doing no favors to this country. The coalition that we built in favor of reform is unprecedented. And I wasn't surprised. I mean, we started this in Colorado at first, and I'd travel around the state and I'd hear the peach growers in Palisades say one thing about what they hoped for in an immigration bill. I'd hear the cattle ranchers say something else, the ski resorts say something else, our high-tech community, our immigrant rights community, everybody coming together to say, you know what, it's long past time to get this fixed. And when we brought this to the national level, working together with the so-called group or gang of 8 on immigration, we were able to build a coalition that really is unprecedented. In the 5 years that I've been here, I haven't seen universal agreement on anything like we've seen on the immigration bill. And in June of last year, right here in the Senate, we passed a strong bipartisan bill, a bill that strengthens our economy and reduces our debt, a bill that keeps families together, protects our borders and our communities, gives families who came to this country for a better life a chance to earn citizenship and contribute to our economy and to our society. As I mentioned, I was part of that gang of 8 that negotiated the bill. For those who despair about lack of leadership in Congress, and I hear about this all the time, as I know all of my colleagues do, I tell them that for my part, as one American, the greatest sign or signal of legislative leadership that I've seen in the past 5 years was the leadership provided by John McCain, by Lindsey Graham, by Marco Rubio, and by Jeff Flake, the 4 Republicans that sat at that table for 7 months or 8 months and negotiated the immigration bill. It was a lot harder for them to stay there than it was for the Democrats. But the Republicans, those 4 Republicans, sat at the table for 8 months to negotiate a bill because they knew it was the right thing to do for the country and, parenthetically, the right thing to do for their party in that order. Yet here we are. After all that bipartisan agreement, after all that bipartisan work, after a great bipartisan vote on the floor of the Senate on one of the most immediate issues facing this country, 9 months after our bill passed the Senate, we still don't have a bill at the president's desk. The House of Representatives is privileged to have the opportunity to rise above politics as usual and to do something big, something real, something consequential that will last for this country. The House of Representatives has the privilege to show that stalemate doesn't have to be standard operating procedure in Washington, D.C. This issue is completely bipartisan at home. I hear about this as much from Republicans, maybe even more from Republicans in farm country than I do from Democrats. It's a chance to do something important for our nation and for our future. But until the House acts, families, farmers, and businesses all across my state and all across the United States will continue to suffer. Farmers like Eric Hannigan and Michael Hirokata outside of Rocky Ford who can't get the seasonal workers they need and are forced to watch crops, in their case melons, die in the fields. Colorado's high-tech companies on the Front Range, ranging from bioscience, engineering, and aerospace, can't always find the employees that they need. In fact, they often can't find the employees that they need, which introduces an entirely different subject that relates to our K-12 education system, but that's not the topic of the speech today. But we know that almost a quarter of STEM graduates from Colorado's STEM, math and science graduates, from Colorado's leading universities are immigrants that are graduating in the United States, many of whose educations have been subsidized by us. And instead of saying to them, please stay here, build your business here, go work for one of our high-tech companies here, we're saying to them, go home. We'd much rather have you compete with us from India. Go home. We'd much rather have you compete with us from China. It's ridiculous. It makes no sense. And the Senate bill, the bill we passed, changes that. The bill we passed says if you are a STEM graduate from another country and you graduate from an American university and you have a job offer in the United States of America, we will staple a green card to your diploma. That's what we need in this country. That's what the high-tech industry in Colorado needs out of the United States House of Representatives. I mentioned tourism and our ski resorts. They'll continue to suffer. This is Colorado's second largest industry. There are a lot of reasons to act here. There are a lot of economic reasons to act, but I think there are also fundamental reasons that have to do with who we are as a country. We often say, it's often said, that America is a nation of immigrants, and of course, that's true. There's literally no other country in the world, Mr. President, for which immigration is so central to its history and to its identity. And I have heard enough speeches in this chamber to know that for a lot of us, for a lot of the 100 of us, it's very personal as well. I'm a first generation of American, and I know there are many others that are here. There isn't a person in this chamber that doesn't have immigration as part of their family's history. But this isn't just a theoretical idea that we're a nation of immigrants, and I want to take a moment, Mr. President, to reflect on what this really means. This is a photo I'm proud to say I actually managed to take with my cell phone. My daughters would be shocked to know that I was able not only to get the picture taken, but it's almost, it's not even blurry, Mr. President. I had an occasion, I hope you have had it or you have the opportunity to do it, to do something I'd never imagined I'd ever have the chance to do. I attended a naturalization ceremony held for active duty service members of Fort Carson, Colorado. So let's be clear. These are men and women that are serving the United States of America in uniform. And on that day, they became citizens of the United States, but until that day, they were not not citizens. But still, they were serving and are serving in our armed forces. The 13 soldiers and spouses who became U.S. citizens that day represented 12 different countries. And you can see there's a picture of them, 12 different countries among the 13. And I would like, I'm going to read the list, but Mr. President, I was so blown away by the list that I asked one of the people from the INS who was there to give me what's called the Oath Ceremony Nationality Report, from which they read the names of the countries, and I'd ask Mr. President for that to be included in the record. Thanks, Mr. President. It's an astonishing list. Here are the countries that these folks are from: China, the People's Republic of China, Colombia, Haiti, Jamaica, Malaysia, Mexico, Nicaragua, the Philippines, South Korea, Togo, Ukraine, and the United Kingdom. 12 different countries, Mr. President, and every single one of them came here in pursuit of the American dream, just as generations of people from around the world have sought out the United States to build their future. And these are the people, and people just like them all across the United States of America, are going to determine our future, just as every generation of immigrants has helped us to determine our future. Whether it's refugees fleeing persecution, whether it's parents seeking opportunity for their children, it's those stepping forward to sacrifice for our shared values, as all of these young men and women are, who make America the country that we love. But there's no way to argue that our current immigration policies reflect that history or our values. So let me paint a picture of what our country would look like if this immigration bill were passed. And just to be clear again, it's not imaginary. We passed the bill here in the United States Senate. And if people on the other side have issues with the bill, what I say is, we have no monopoly on wisdom. Bring your ideas, improve the bill. I can think of some things that I would do to improve the bill, but you can't just do nothing. You can't do nothing, because if we pass the bill in the House, those who come to this country for a better life, including young people whose parents brought them here as children, they're here through no fault of their own, would have the opportunity to enter a tough but fair path to citizenship. With a path in place, we then see higher wages, more consumption of goods, and increased taxes. It would reduce our debt. This bill, and this isn't me talking, it's not Michael Bennet from Colorado talking, this is the Congressional Budget Office, has said it would reduce our debt by nearly $1 trillion over 20 years. I am unaware of any other piece of legislation that is passed with a bipartisan majority in the United States Congress that reduces our debt by $1 trillion. But this would, and it wouldn't do it in across-the-board cuts. It would do it because of the growth that it would create in our economy, the incremental economic growth. In fact, the Congressional Budget Office has said that if we pass this bill, we'd see an increase of almost 6% of incremental GDP growth over this 20-year period, 3% in the first 10 years and 5% in the second 10 years. Second, our bill would put into place an efficient and flexible visa system that would catapult our competitiveness in a changing 21st century economy. Canada, our neighbor to the north, is figuring out how to attract the world's talent to its shores. That's what they're spending their time doing. We, a historic nation of immigrants, is saying, please go home and compete with us from someplace else, or maybe go to Canada and compete with us there, from there. Talented entrepreneurs and innovators from around the world would have the opportunity to stay here if we pass this bill and create jobs to fuel our economy. It's well documented how many Fortune 500 companies were started by immigrants, but millions of small businesses across the United States have been started by immigrants as well. High-skilled workers in science, technology, engineering, and math, and lower-skilled workers in industries like hospitality and tourism would come into the country to fill jobs where there are no available U.S. workers. This was a bill that labor and the chamber endorsed. That's the first time that's happened. It was a difficult and painful negotiation, but we were able to get it done, and they agreed that we ought to get it done. Really important for Colorado and for a lot of other states, we would stabilize the labor challenges facing our agriculture industry with a new streamlined program for agricultural guest workers that's more usable for employees and protects our workers. Again, first bill ever. We call this portion the Ag Jobs Bill. First one to be endorsed by the growers and the farm workers. That's never happened before, but working with Senator Rubio and Senator Hatch and Senator Feinstein, we were able to get that done. Finally, and importantly, our borders would be more secure with new fencing, double the number of border agents, and increased spending on new technology. We'd have what they call full situational awareness on the border to allow us to interdict threats rapidly and successfully. And very importantly, with a mandatory employment verification system and more effective entry-exit system, we would prevent future waves of illegal immigration so we don't end up back in the problem that we're facing today. And so that our small businesses all across the country can stop being the INS and can concentrate on building their businesses. These are all changes that our nation urgently needs. And there's more in this bill. I'm not here to argue for some partisan piece of legislation that didn't attract votes on both sides. This bill was entirely bipartisan from beginning to end. Now, I've heard a laundry list of excuses out of people in the House why they haven't addressed immigration reform, Mr. President, but it's time at some point for those excuses to stop and for the stalling to stop. And if they want to show the country that they're serious about growing our economy and keeping families together, then they need to show us they're serious about immigration reform. I actually think the Speaker wants to pass a bill. In fact, I think he could pass a bill if he put it on the floor tomorrow and just let the House work its will. But it's not my job, obviously, to tell him how to do his job. It's no one's job over here to tell him how to do his job, but I suppose it's our job to give him encouragement, to say we'll be there to support you if you can find a way to get this bill passed. If they want to show the country that they're serious about growing our economy and keeping families together, then they need to show us that they're serious about immigration reform. It doesn't have to be a carbon copy of what we passed. Although I think if they look at it, what they'll find is that the elements that are in there hang pretty well together. Look at this picture, Mr. President, again. This is what America looks like. This is what Colorado looks like. This is what America looks like. It's what it's all about. These are faces of people who want to contribute. This diversity is how we've thrived as a country, and it's how we're going to thrive in the future. It's always been our strength, and it's what sets us apart in many ways from countries all over the world. These new citizens want to contribute to our economy and to our communities. They want to serve our country, Mr. President. They want to pay taxes and abide by the law, and they want to build a better life here for themselves and their families. This picture is exactly why we need reform. These brave men and women say it all. They say it much better than ours do. I see that my colleague from Pennsylvania is here, so I'll wrap up, Mr. President. But let me just say that two of the things that set us apart from countries all over the world, two of the essential components that make us the United States of America, are our commitment to the rule of law and our understanding of ourselves as being a nation of immigrants. Almost no other country in the world can say what we can say about that. I can tell you, no other country in the world was having that naturalization ceremony the day we were having it at Fort Carson. And this bill gives us a chance to reaffirm those two ideas, that we're a nation committed to the rule of law and that we are a nation of immigrants. I had the chance this weekend to spend some time in my wife's hometown in the Mississippi Delta. It's one of the poorer parts of the country. So it has been for a very long time. Tough place in a lot of ways. We've got a lot of great family that are there. And after we finished visiting there, we went over to Memphis to visit the Civil Rights Museum, which has just reopened. If anybody has the chance to go, they should go to visit it, because what you see is the history of a struggle from the 1600s forward, generation upon generation, trying to perfect this country and keep it true to the idea that in this case, we're all created equal. And for a long time, we weren't able to perfect that. We still haven't perfected it. We're making progress, and that's what we're meant to do. Today, we have that chance. The House has that chance tomorrow or next week or next month to make sure that we honor our commitment, this generation's commitment, to a generation of immigrants and to the generations that are coming after them. And I hope that they'll take up that challenge. Mr. President, with that, I thank my colleague from Pennsylvania and you as well, Mr. President, for your patience, and I yield the floor.